Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to those on the western side of Australia. Thank you so much for joining today's AMPC webinar. Today, we've got an exciting panel of guests to talk about gamification and the innovation challenge that AMPC sent out to a number of providers. Today's webinar will be led by Stuart Shaw, our core manager for advanced manufacturing. For those of you that haven't been involved in an AMPC webinar before, it will be being recorded and it will be uploaded to our AMPC YouTube channel. So if you would like to share it with anyone else in your organisation, please feel free to do so. We really encourage questions as well. So if you can type in your questions on your toolbox and send them through at the appropriate time, we'll make sure that we get those questions answered by the relevant provider. So sit back and enjoy, and I'll hand you over to Stuart. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Amanda. Welcome, everyone. So, as Amanda suggested, today's webinar is focused on gamification. So, in other words, how can gamification play a part in our industry? So today we'll have presentations from 4 providers. Like we've got, first up, we'd have Intelligent Robotics. We have Jonathan Cook. Then second, Company X. We have Lance. Number 3, with Wunderman Thompson. We have Georgia, and virtually theirs. Last up, we have Sean. So gamification in this, why we've got the 4 solution providers at this webinar today is we opened up to the world, I guess, about this time last year to try and establish where we are as an industry and what R&D is required, and try to align our thoughts with processes and indeed with technologies that are emerging in the different industries. So I've just highlighted number 2 on this list here is remote operations and gamification. And the majority of this is basically a list of the initiatives that we started about January 21, so just this year. And we started this process about this time last year. And the whole process, including the gamification component, we've attracted about 43 new providers to work with AMPC within the industry. And you can see on the right-hand side of this page a bit of a split of where everyone sits from regards of what type of organization. So we've got 79 projects with commercial companies, and we've got 70 projects within Australia. 6 have been completed in the USA as an example. Now, gamification, what we did with the information that we gathered this time last year is we then set out a bit of an RFP process. In other words, a request for proposals through out of our LinkedIn contacts, if you like. So what we started was an initiative in LinkedIn to try and attract different types of companies to work with us, like I mentioned. And in this particular case, we're looking at remote operations. I've highlighted on the left here stage 1. So really what we're looking at is the stage 1 concept projects that we're doing as the 4 providers that we've got here today. Obviously, the aim of this is to establish where gamification can play a part in the industry. And for those that are not aware, what is gamification? Well, that's what this webinar is a little bit about, just to show you where we can use gamification, but using, in this case, one particular use case that we've established for this challenge, if you like, that we put out, was just working on generic beef scribing. It was a simpler process to put forward. We could identify if you like, a beef side, identify some cut lines, and it was actually something that translated into a game fairly easily, but offered some really unique challenges and offered some really good examples of where we could use the tech. All right. So again, we started this process December, January last year. Today we've got 4 projects, so we're getting presented 4 projects, about 6 to 9 months turnaround from when those projects started. And the outcomes have proven to date. We've got suitability for training staff. We've got suitability for using the technology to drive automation or semi-automation. And putting beef scribing aside, we've got suitability for the technology, which you'll see here today again, is the suitability for technology to be used for other processes. So it's not about beef scribing. Beef scribing is just a use case for this webinar and the projects that we did. So where do we see, I guess the bottom line on this slide is where I want to get to, but our aspirational vision, putting training aside for the moment though, is to have gamification and or remote operations operating by 2030, that becomes a normal thing. So you're using gaming / technology for training staff, yes. You're using gaming technology for driving semi-automation, but you're also using that gaming technology to bring a whole different set of demographics into the industry. People who, through physical inabilities can't join the industry, but can sit in front of a desk, for example, or people that are younger and work in a different environment or would prefer to work in a different environment from a processing floor. But how can we utilize all of that to help improve the industry and drive change for the better? All right. So what I guess is gamification for? It's all of the above, basically. Feedback and progress today indicates that all of the above are apparent, and I say the feedback today is we've taken this technology around to individual processing sites. We've taken it to like beef 21 back in May, for example. So we've had a lot of feedback on where this technology can play a part. But employee engagement and training to remote operations, I mean, that's really the main focus for today. And again, we'll have 4 different presentations from 4 different companies. Each of those organizations will be offering a very unique approach to the same challenge. Some of those challenges, or some of those companies, are purely their focus is gaming technology and morely from a marketing point of view. Some of the organizations are focused on that virtual reality world and immersive technology, and some of the companies are focused more on the automation side of where this technology can drive. But I think it's been really useful for AMPC, and indeed those involved, where we've got to from in the past 6 to 9 months to get to this point where we've now got, if not a clear pathway, we've definitely got directions to go and take it to the next level. And that's what it's all about. At the end of this presentation, I'll be handing over to Jonathan Cook from Intelligent Robotics in a second, but at the end of this presentation, really appreciate any feedback that we can get. I want to encourage engagement with the providers and indeed the AMPC to talk about this more, and appreciate any questions that come through the webinar or at the end of the webinar. So that being said, I'm going to hand over to Jonathan Cook. Amanda, if you can switch slides over to Jonathan and take it away, Johnny.
Thanks very much, Stuart. Hello, everyone. Firstly, thank you to AMPC for inviting us to present as part of this webinar, and to you all for attending. My name is Jonathan Cook, and I'm from a company called Intelligent Robotics. We're a company which started up early last year, who are committed to developing innovative robotic and automation products for the red meat industry, including applications such as automated cutting using advanced sensing technologies such as X-ray imaging. And it is within this context which we approached AMPC's Gamification Innovation Challenge. Our approach to the challenge involved developing an operator-driven solution which could be used to drive robotics to perform beef scribing. This would provide an alternative to an X-ray imaging-based system, which, while the gold standard for driving accurate cutting, isn't suitable for all processing plants. We started by looking at the key value drivers for beef scribing and what we'd be looking to achieve with the software. Firstly, the software must enable cuts to be positioned more accurately than what a person can consistently achieve with a saw on a processing line. We also need to minimize any wastage of high-value product to trim, specifically by ensuring cuts are square, parallel to the correct width, etc. The software must allow for maximum value to be created in this area. From a safety perspective, the ability to remove a powered saw from a human's hand on the processing line is seen as another key value driver, which can be achieved by ensuring the software can interface with a robot. And finally, the challenges around the labour market in the meat industry are well known. The system should leverage the opportunity to draw from a wider labour pool, such as enabling people to perform scribing who are otherwise abled, currently on light duties, or located completely off-site. With these goals in mind, a gamified scribing interface was developed with the following process flow. The first step is to identify the key points which determine where the cuts should go. This involves identifying features such as the rib 1 junction to define the brisket cutting line, or the top of rib 11 at the spine to determine the ideal location for the quartering site spine scribe for a 3-rib hind quarter. With this particular placement example, enabling the length of the cube roll to be maximized when that scribe is ribbed out. For the system we have developed, this would be done by an operator identifying and clicking on the key points of interest on images of carcasses which were presented on the screen. Eventually, AI algorithms will be used to place these key points with the ability of the operator to adjust them if necessary. The software was designed in a way to allow for an operator to do this quickly and accurately. It was designed as a web-based application to enable the operator to be located anywhere in the plant or even the world. The key points used are also customizable depending on how each specific site would like to define their cuts, and can also be changed on the fly during production. For instance, the operator may be directed to make a 3-rib hind quarter for steers and 1-rib hind quarter for cows. This interface is the key element to our submission to the Innovation Challenge. Next, the actual cut profiles would then be calculated from these key points, ensuring they are placed correctly. For example, ensuring the vertical rib scribes are parallel and to the correct width, or that the spine scribes are positioned correctly to produce a square cube roll. This would be done automatically with simple sensing coupled with vision processing to enable far greater speed and consistency than what a human is currently capable of achieving in terms of placing cuts with a saw, or even drawing the actual cutting lines themselves. And finally, in a production system, these cut profiles would then be sent from the software to a robot to perform the cuts in an accurate and safe fashion. Our vision engineer will now take us through a demonstration of the software that we've developed.
In production mode, an operator is presented with a number of views to help them accurately mark key features on a carcass image and navigate the interface. The features marked by the operator will be used by a vision system to guide a robot and place scribing cuts onto the carcass. In this demonstration, we will be working with a 5-scribe cut specification. There will be 1 spine cut across the lumbosacral junction, 1 spine cut at the grading site to produce a 3-rib hind quarter, 1 spine cut at the cube chuck roll separation site, and 2 vertical rib cuts to produce a rib 2 to 8 short rib. Before we begin labeling, let's have a quick look at the user interface. The largest window is the live view. This shows the current region of interest, and this is where all labels are placed. To the left is the picture-in-picture preview, which shows where the live view is zoomed into relative to the whole carcass. To the left of that is the guide. This provides a brief instruction and illustration of what needs to be labeled in the current view. On the very bottom, we have the navigation bar, which shows us where we are in the labeling process and allows us to navigate between steps. Just above that, we have the timeline, which shows how much time has elapsed since the carcass arrived at the station and reminds the operator how much time they have left before the next carcass arrives. Finally, there is the header bar, which shows us the current cut specification and an exit button. Let's now have a go at labeling up a carcass. In the first step, the guide reminds us that we need to label ribs 1 to 11. We see that the AI has done a good job of identifying the first 11 ribs for us. It is important to check that the 11 ribs have been identified correctly, because these labels will be used in later stages to help us identify ribs when we are zoomed into areas of interest. If we want to, we can adjust the position of a label simply by dragging it. Let's now proceed to the next step by clicking anywhere on the live view. In step 3, we need to identify the lumbosacral junction. And again, the AI has done a great job of identifying it for us. In this case, I'm not going to adjust it. Let's just proceed to the next step. Now remember, the lumbosacral junction is a position where the robot is actually going to place a spine cut. We can see that clearly when we transition to the next step. Looking at the picture-in-picture view, we see that a horizontal line has been placed where the robot will perform its cut. Step 3 is a bit more involved. Here, we need to label 2 points on rib 11. The guide tells us to label the bottom of rib 11 first. As you can see in the live view, rib 11 has already been identified for us from one of the markers that we placed in step number 1. So let's label the bottom of rib 11. This will be the grading cut. Now we are asked in the guide to identify the position of the diaphragm along rib 11. So that is approximately here. Now you can see that a green marker has been placed. This is to indicate that there won't be a cut at this position. This is simply an anchor marker, and we will come back to that shortly. Let's proceed to the next step by clicking anywhere on the live view. Notice again that the picture-in-picture view has been updated to indicate that a grading cut will be placed in this position here. In the fourth step, we are asked to label the top of rib 5. This is the chuck roll cut, so let's do that. Again, you can see that rib 5 has been identified for us, so we don't have to identify it again. Let's proceed to the next step. In step number 5, we are asked to identify the rib 1 junction. Now that's here, right next to the maneuver room. You can see again, a green marker has been placed. This is an anchor marker, which you can see is connected by an imaginary line up to the diaphragm anchor marker. And you can see 2 imaginary lines have been drawn across the ribs. These will indicate the direction of the rib scribes. To define the start and end position of the rib scribes, we continue to place markers, in this case on rib number 2, because we are cutting a rib 2 to 8 short rib. So let's place a marker here and a marker here. You will notice that these markers are blue because they are cutting markers. Finally, in step 6, we define where the rib scribes will begin. We do this by placing markers along the 8th rib. And again, as you can see, the 8th rib is clearly identified for us from the labels that we placed in step number 1. So we place our markers along rib 8 here and click anywhere on the screen to continue. Before we proceed to the next carcass, we have an opportunity to review our rib scribes. In this case, we can see that I can adjust them a little bit away from the spine by moving the green anchor point. You can see here that the picture-in-picture preview also shows an example of all the scribing cuts that the system will perform for the current cut specification. In the background, the vision system will use the labeled points to automatically calculate the cut profiles to be used by the robot, ensuring they are square to the spine and the splitting plane as per the customer specification. It should also be noted that the cut specification and therefore processing steps can be completely specified by the customer and can vary from carcass to carcass during production. Let's proceed to the next carcass. This time, let's go through the process a little bit quicker. I can see that all 11 ribs have been detected successfully, so let's proceed. Similarly, the lumbosacral junction has been identified correctly as well, so let's continue to the next step. Okay, at rib 11, we need to identify the bottom of rib 11, which is here, and the diaphragm, there. Move on to the next step. Top of rib 5, there. The rib 1 junction, here, and the endpoints. Now the starting points at rib number 8. Finally, a review and adjustment, and that's it.
So that is an overview of how we've approached AMPC's Gamification Innovation Challenge. We envision the next step being engaging with processors for a hands-on demonstration and to provide valuable user feedback on the interface we've developed. We also plan to begin developing AI algorithms to identify the key points and integrate this into the software, further improving the speed capabilities of the system. Looking even further forward, we would pair the system with a robot to perform a prototype demonstration of the system on a site. And finally, we would be seeking to partner with a processor to install a system for use in their production environment. Thank you all for joining us today. I hope you've enjoyed our presentation, and I look forward to answering any of your questions in the Q&A session. If you have any further questions or would like to discuss this application with us further, please reach out to Clyde, our CEO, whose contact details are listed on the slide. I'll now hand you back to Stu.
Thank you, Jonathan and Andrew. That was really great. I think we'll hold off till questions till the 4 presentations are over. But no, I really appreciate that. That was really good and definitely insightful, and I hope people found that interesting as I did. I'll now hand over, Amanda, if you don't mind, if we can hand over to Lance from Company X, who's over there in NZ at the moment. So over to you, Lance.
Thank you. Yeah. Very good. Just let me show the right screen here. All right, so just confirming you can see that opening screen all right, Stuart?
We can, thank you.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lance Balfron from Company X. Thank you for joining us. Sorry, I just got to move a window out of the way. So, as a brief introduction to Company X, essentially, we are a global operator. We have 2 business units. One is software solutions for business and new innovation, based primarily in the learning and training domain. We were founded in 2012, and the team has grown to nearly 60 New Zealand based specialists. And I guess Company X cares about business value when we partner with clients. So our aim is to develop working software as quickly as we can. And we operate to 3 core principles. And first one being, we like to make our clients look good. We always do what we say we're going to do, and we give our clients choices. For this project, our objective, as we saw it, was to demonstrate how gamification can benefit productivity and health and safety outcomes. So our solution. So true to our, true to our philosophy, we wanted to design something simple and usable early on. Then once that is done, we get testing underway to enhance in short sprints. And of course, we wanted to incorporate the gamification experience to add fun and a bit of competition in there. So our three main considerations when we were developing was that we wanted to use a platform that meant whatever we developed, it could be used on a variety of different platforms, such as web, PC, laptops. And also we wanted to make it reusable for other use cases. So I think as Stuart mentioned that this we're using beef scribing here, but obviously, as you'll see, we should be able to use the same principles in other use cases as well. And most importantly, we wanted to keep the technology simple and what the user would be accustomed to. For example, using a mouse, being able to use a browser, so a web-based application. We didn't want them to have to learn different technologies as well. So it ended up, through our experience, it can end up being a barrier to users if they're trying to figure out how to use things as well, just trying to learn the subject matter. So what I'll do now is take you straight to a demonstration that I've got. So the main concept here was to have a tutorial mode. So what we were looking at is some basic principles of, let's show the learner what they will be doing so they can have context. Let's give them the opportunity to practice it, and then let's give them the opportunity to have a go in a gaming type environment. So first up, once you sign in, you can go to the tutorial mode. Here we have a video. So this is part of the concept of showing them what to do. So I'll just play that through to you. It's only about a minute long. So
count the ribs by double clicking each rib with your mouse. Start at the bottom rib and count upwards. The diaphragm will be drawn in place. For the first cut line start point, click on rib 13 in line with the rib 11 diaphragm intersection and at the end of the rib 1 cartilage. Draw a line from the start point to where the diaphragm passes rib 11. Continue on to rib 1. The next line is a mirror cut line offset at 75, 100 or 150 millimeters. This one is at 100 millimeters. Between ribs 5 and 6, place a horizontal cut line through the spine section only. Finally, between ribs 12 and 13, place another horizontal cut line.
And so it's pretty basic and pretty simple. What I should add here too, we weren't really hyper-focused on complete accuracy. So there may be things that might seem slightly off to you, but really what we're looking for is to get principles illustrated. Accuracy can come later through user testing. Now we move into the tutorial mode, and as you can see here, we can play the video again if we wish, but also we can actually just scrub through. So as I'm learning, I can scrub through to certain areas if I get stuck. So I can have a play around here. So I could actually zoom up closer if we want to. And now I can just have a play about with it. So first up, obviously I'll need to. So again, looking, I mean, this may seem a little bit laborious, but really looking to just, I guess, get some habits installed for the user. So once all the lines come in, we can click on our starting point at rib 13, and now we can draw a line to where we think it might be, and come through here, and between ribs 5 and 6. Let's draw those lines in between 12 and 13. And again, of course, I can scrub through and go, oh, rightio. Right, maybe I didn't quite get that one right, but that's okay. So you can redo this, we can clear it and keep going. So once, as a user, you're comfortable enough with the tutorial mode, we can get into practice mode. So in practice mode, we don't need to go through and calculate ribs and so on. We can just start where we want to and come down to a certain area, and then we can actually have the correct line, the correct start point and end point, and the correct line that we should be on. So again, just being quite tactile, just using the mouse here, and we get a little indication of how long it's taken us to do. And if we want, we can clear it off and start again. So let's go into game mode. So now I'm pretty confident that I'm not bad, that I should be able to take some people on. So let's move into how the scoring is. So we'll base it simply around how many carcasses you process and the accuracy of your cut lines. And every time you correctly process 3 carcasses, and that correctly processed can be whatever, I guess, whatever values you want that, or how you want to determine that. But essentially what we've done here is, if you can get within a certain scoring area, then that would be classed as a correct stroke. And as well as that, we do have the difficulty level, so we can give you 30 seconds to place your cut lines. If you're a novice, we shorten that down to 20 as intermediate, and if you're the master or the expert, then that gives you 6 seconds to place your cut lines. Right, so I'll get started now, and the competition begins. Five seconds left. Okay. Yes, I do. We have our score here. I know the music's still playing. I can't turn that off, but here we go. And then we also have the full leadership board. And essentially that's it. So the idea again around that gamification, I mean there are accuracy things that that we can work on and so on and so forth, but that whole idea of being able to, even just by adding a bit of music, and the positive reinforcement from sound and that sort of thing just adds a little bit more excitement to it, which we think that your trainees and users would actually find that quite fun, to be honest. So for us, our next steps that we're looking at is primarily for user testing, being able to get this in front of users. Again, because we like to start and get things going pretty quickly, we don't want to waste too much time on how we believe that the users would be using it and what would work and what wouldn't. What we were really after was get something up and going, just prove that concept, and then look to move on from there. So, I mean, we acknowledge improving the overall look and feel of that, adding a better results page and leaderboard, the introduction of an admin. So as an admin, you could adjust the amount of time that they would get to do the actual gameplay. It can be where the scoring points are, how much they score, all of those sorts of things. So you really get to be involved and to work with the users and their training, and also to add analytics and reporting capabilities. So can we do a gaps analysis to understand who's at and where perhaps they need a little bit more work before we start moving them on to actual source or however we wish to do that. So the benefits as we see it is is that as the concept shows, I think that you can apply that to other training use cases as well. And also it gives you the ability to provide and engage in training that will improve process efficiency and increase your staff expertise. So also, I think what we've found in other, I guess in other use cases with different sorts of training that we have done, when using innovative technology, it does enhance the company profile within the industry as well as for employment. So, you know, if as a company you are actually having some innovative type of training, that does add a bonus and provide value to the company. Then, of course, we can use what we've developed here as a foundation to autonomous operation. I guess from, I'll just move on to the future, how we see things happening. So it would be, let's finish off what was started here. We can look at VR as an option as well. So again, starting iteratively around a really basic one. Can we take what we've already used and developed, and can we move that on to a VR type proof of concept or scenario? I think one of the probably more exciting options would be around virtually scribing. So again, taking the concepts and the techniques that we're using here, and through a tablet and a pen, be able to take live camera feeds and scribe directly on top of images while the user is in a remote control room, for example. And then taking one step further, you could look at gamified, robot cutting systems. The platform that we've used does enable us to move on that and be able to develop for many different platforms as well. So that's it. Thank you for your time, and Stuart, I'll hand it back to you.
Lance, again, thank you very much. That was brilliant, and I really look forward to the comments and discussions afterwards that follow that. So without any further wait, I might invite Georgia to the stage. Amanda, if you can switch screens to get Georgia, that'd be great. And that's all yours, Georgia.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. Firstly, thank you, AMPC, for inviting us to work on such a exciting project. It's been an amazing 6 to 9 months immersing ourselves in the industry and working with the team on what is an incredibly exciting project. So first of all, to introduce myself, Georgia Bruton, I'm a managing partner at Wunderman Thompson. So a little bit about Wunderman Thompson. So we, we are a part creative, part innovation consultancy, and a part technology company all in one. So we've got quite a breadth of specific skills and capabilities, but ultimately our mission as an organization is building better futures for our people, our partners, and our communities, which is why this project's been such an exciting one for us to be a part of. But one of the reasons why AMPC approached to work with us on this project is because we've got a really deep skills in experience design. So yeah, we work on a lot of gamification projects, but then also coming up with innovative ways to engage humans and ultimately change human behavior. So I'll take you through just a couple of examples so you can kind of see the breadth of those experiences. So the first one is a software that we created for Rip Curl, which was ultimately about redefining the way surfers interacted with the ocean, enabling them to track their different surfing journeys and get them to share that with communities around the world, and also be able to predict and get the opportunity to engage with every magical wave Another one is creating online games, which is one that we created for Subway Sinker Sub, to ultimately get people to engage with the brand, but drive them in store to purchase and enjoy Subways. So this is a game, you'll probably see it live at the moment, but this is a game that has been running for 2 years now, and that the hook of wanting to play it is growing more and more. And another example is one where we've created AR experiences to get people to engage with brands and products from Treasury Wine Estates. So this is getting people to understand kind of either the brand story or the product story, and have them enjoy the experience of interacting with the brand, but ultimately getting them to come back and use it more and more. So, and then finally, another little example is one that we've created for MLA, which is a conceptual one, and it's ultimately driving consumers of Australia to engage with red meat packaging, and have them ultimately find more usage occasions for red meat, and therefore purchase more red meat. So this is a long-term project of driving category growth for this category. Then so AMPC, so this project ultimately, we've talked about it at length around what we were set to develop as a vendor or as part of this process, but I guess in a nutshell, it's ultimately to develop a beef scribing gaming interface. An interface that would deliver training and education for new, current and prospective employees. A gaming interface that will ultimately deliver an increase in productivity and profitability for the role and the plant. Attract and retain employees, increase workplace safety, and become the potential for an interface for remote operations, which is all in line with what Stuart and the other guys have talked about. So when we were set this challenge and began the journey, we applied a particular approach, which is a tried and tested approach that we utilize for a lot of our projects. We call it the double diamond approach, but ultimately it's 4 key phases, which is around discover, define, develop, and determine. We believe you've got to do a lot of rigor in the upfront journey and in uncovering what are the key insights, what are the things that are ultimately going to help with the process, what is it that's going to work for the user, so that then the user finds it easy and therefore produces better outcomes. So there's 4 key areas in this discover phase that we I guess went through with the AMPC team, but then also did a lot of kind of on the side research and investigation to really uncover these key insights and areas. The first one was around partners, the industry and the category. The second one was around the actual beef scribing process. Obviously this, as we've talked about, this is a use case, but to come up with the concept that was right for this, we needed to really understand the operations, the type of people that manage this role, work in this role, but also the training process. Then we also needed to understand all the multiple key stakeholders and audiences that are part of this journey, and where this concept would help them and relate to them. And then finally, implementing gamified learning through experiences. So as I mentioned before, we've worked a lot in gamification, and that's something that we specialize in. And the reason for that is it really is one of the most powerful engagement tools in today's day and age. And the reason for that is by creating that game, it creates a emotional connection. And when you have emotional connection, you can drive human change. And the framework we used around gamification is Oculus framework. So I'm not going to go through this in detail, but ultimately it was the theory behind the construct of the game that we created. But it's an engagement framework that's all around human-centric design models, and it's around 8 core drivers for human motivation. So once we kind of created the theory around the game, we worked out what were the core drivers that we needed to utilize. As also part of this process, so once we got through the discover phase, we got into the define phase, and a key part of this define phase was reviewing all the different interactive text experience solutions we could utilize. We went through quite a lot, and I'm going to take you through those that we looked at, but with AMPC chose one that they wanted to utilize for the final concept. So the first one was around VR painting and drawing, and I'm sure most of you know that virtual reality, it's ultimately using a headset, and with this one it's a hand device where you could in a 3D world scribe on a carcass and interact in a game in that way. The second one was around augmented reality, so creating a 3D carcass image where people could interact with, whether it would be through a phone, an iPad, or a Surface Hub. Then we also looked at tele-operated robotics, which ultimately this is having someone in a remote location and interacting with utilizing either a mouse or a glove or some other device that would control a robotic arm in the processing plant. Next we looked at kinetic 3D reactive modeling, which is ultimately what happens is you have a camera in the processing plant that films and scans the carcass, and a 3D printer in another location, and so which the 3D printer creates the carcass in real time, which then a user could interact with and do the scribing action. We looked at holographic design, so this is using holographic imagery to potentially interact and train with a 3D image of a carcass. We also looked at AR smart glasses, which is ultimately wearing smart glasses where it's a mix of real and virtual reality, and where the glasses could help potentially the user interact with or create a more accurate scribe actually on the plant floor. But where we landed on, an AMPC wanted us to pursue with our concept is interactive touchscreens. And there was a lot of really great reasons for this. One, obviously, it's a widely used technology. The penetration of smartphones is enormous. So everybody knows how to do that through smartphones and iPads and Surface iPads. But then also another really important part is the fact that we could create the life size. So imagining in a location at a plant, you could have like a 2-meter screen by a 1-meter screen. So you can actually really create that real environment of what it's like on the processing floor and the actual scale of the carcasses to help the user really experience that role as firsthand as possible, as realistic as possible. But then the other part is just the accuracy of interacting with a touchscreen. So the technology is so amazing with touchscreens now that just even down to the millimeter, a finger or a pen touching a certain coordinate is incredibly accurate, and therefore we are able to train, measure and optimize in something like a beef scribing role. So now I'm just going to take you a little bit more detail in this use case that we've concepted for utilizing an interactive touchscreen technology.
Georgia,
so,
just 3 minutes, so you know. Okay, 3 minutes remaining.
Oh, Stu, Hey, Stuart.
Yes, just letting you know there's 3 minutes remaining.
Oh, okay,
That's all.
sorry. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's nearly done. Yeah. Okay, so in the discovery phase, we uncovered that the key was that it's all about plotting 2 coordinates, so point A and point B, and creating a scribing line. And that has been the foundation. If you just think about that little role, that's what we needed to achieve. So by using an interactive screen, the ultimate objective is to bring a live feed from the plant into the screen so that people could scribe from that. But for now, the touchscreen is around a concept of a game that people can on predetermined carcasses that we've already created within a game that you scribe these coordinates. And as you'll see from the demo here, it takes you through creating a profile and gives you lots of different instructions on each scribe and each product spec that you need to play. There's 4 levels that you can go through the journey, from beginner, intimate, expert, and professional. And as you get, you're measured on accuracy and speed. And the accuracy is within 5 millimeters of the plotting of the coordinates to 10 millimeters. If you get out of that space, then you don't get a score. But if you get perfect, then you get the ultimate score. So this is just kind of an example of what it would look like. And then the ultimate level is the professional level. And this is the scribing mastery, where you have to do all 4 cuts within a 15-second time zone. And all of this is documented in a scribing leaderboard, which can be per site, per company, or national or global. And just to create that stickiness, we've got badges and things like Strava and all sorts of other games out there. You can win all sorts of badges. So just to wrap up, obviously taken over time, what's next? So we have these touch screens ready to put into plants to actually get users to kind of start to interact with these games. And as part of the technology, we've created dashboards to measure how the interactors use the experience and engage in the experience, so that we can optimize it and ultimately uncover in the short term, how can we drive higher productivity, greater yield, higher safety, larger pool of candidates, and higher staff retention. So Wunderman Thompson and AMPC are really keen to support all you guys. From a beef processor point of view, obviously we could utilize this prototype and actually get it into your plant, look at how we can improve training, operational knowledge, test the novelty and the engagement, maybe test some the incentives to how get people better. And then from a lamb processing point of view, you know, let's look at the slaughter room, boning, packing, and maintenance and service tasks. So thank you, everybody. And sorry I went a little bit over time, Stuart.
You're right, you've done well. Thank you very much, Georgia. That was really good and insightful, and lots of great tech that you've seen there. I mean, you've obviously had a lot of experience in this field, but not so much the meat industry itself. So thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
And Amanda, if we can now swap over to Sean, and Sean Kuno will take it away and do your presentation. Thanks, Sean.
Stuart. And again, thanks to AMPC for inviting us to be part of this process. To all of you who are watching through this today, my name's Sean Cunhill, as Stuart said. I'm from a company called Virtually There VR. We're a leader in the creation of immersive training solutions deployed through different technology platforms, predominantly virtual reality, augmented reality, and online. We really focus on the cognitive psychology and behavioral science elements of learning. So the fact that, you know, static learning through reading and static lectures and so on, versus being able to interact and participate and learn by doing, have been found in numerous studies to be more effective. So we really try and bring training to life so people learn through experiences. We've got extensive experience in industrial and commercial training solutions, and we believe that we're a perfect partner for what you're trying to achieve. I won't go into a lot of detail around you know, the objectives, because they've been touched on, but essentially we really took the stance that training needs to be engaging, and it's got to be relevant to be effective, and using immersive technologies or interactive technologies were the way to go. We wanted to drive high awareness and understanding of how to visually identify the different specs, because a lot of the jobs in the plants are essentially through visual hand-eye coordination, so identifying points on the carcass, cutting the different points on the carcass, but being able to upskill low-skilled and migrant workforces through to higher skilled people. So how do you bring people along the journey so that they're all learning together and behaving as a team? Ultimately to mitigate the risks, particularly around a reduction in yield or OH&S issues. So why VR? There's specific industry challenges that you guys know way better than myself, but there is a challenge recruiting and attracting people to the industry. Training, new recruits are often low skilled or migrant labour. Retention, the industry across the board has about 40% turnover of people leaving the industry. So you're constantly training people, constantly trying to get them up to speed, but also trying to engage them so they stick around and feel like there's a career path to follow. And ultimately, because everything is done manually, there is a very variable yield result depending on the plant and the crews that are on board. VR and interactive technology can help manage these challenges and accelerate capability, because what you're doing is you're putting people in a relevant environment where they're doing the tasks that they would normally do. You can run them through a myriad of scenarios, from the everyday scenarios to the once in 3 months, once in 2 months scenarios. It's engaging because you're being drawn into the environment. You feel like you're actually doing the task. And that's why first-person games, immersive games, have taken off so much in the last 10 years. On top of that, ultimately, it's very accessible because we can put it on the cloud and push it across multiple devices. That also makes it scalable, and because it's data-based, we capture all the data. It's also measurable, so it can help with managing people and having conversations around their capability. So, the opportunity in the VR meat processing. So as I said, recruiting, onboarding, career development and engagement. We've completed 2 projects. The first one is the beef rib scribing, but as Stuart mentioned, this tail end presentation, as I bring home the last leg, is we're sharing some of the additional work that we've done leveraging the same sort of platform. So the beef rib scribing we've done in immersive VR, and the beef primal cutting we've done online, but both can be delivered on each platform. So ultimately there'll be a immersive VR element of both trainings and an online element for both trainings. I'm just going to play you a video. So unfortunately, we didn't have a big budget for models, so you had to put up with me in that frame. But as you can see, you know, since presenting or exhibiting at BEEF 2021 with AMPC, you know, we've evolved the platform, and we've now integrated physical objects. So you saw me in the top corner actually using a Java saw, and you know, it was being picked up by the headset and allowing me to scribe the carcass. We've also done some work with one of the other suppliers with AMPC, Konica, and we now have a 3D printed saw that enables us to cost effectively and efficiently produce these types of tools to integrate into training. So the key thing is, as with the other providers, you know, there's a training element, there's a practicing element, and there's a gamification element, and then we measure against the preferred scribe lines or you know, specs that can change between plant and between beast, but the person is measured against those lines, and the variance and the time taken is what determines the score. So that's the beef scribing. I'm going to just play one more video that shows you the cut picking. So as you saw there, again, we've got the set elements of learn, practice through quiz, playing the game, and then review. But it's all done in a fun, interactive way. It's all done with 3D images so that you're getting that those visual cues of what the product actually looks like. And so you can transfer that really easily and quickly into a real world operating situation. As I said, we've currently got these on a web browser version and an immersive VR version, but we could just as easily do it on a tablet version. And that means then that it's you pick the right tools for the right outcomes. You know, if people are practicing for an interview, or if they're practicing as part of onboarding, they might do it on computer or on tablet. Or if you're running on-site training, you could put them in immersive headsets, and it just dials up the experience that they're getting through the training. So we've completed a range of projects, beef scribing and cut identification, but we're also in development around doing sheet versions of those projects and a maintenance project as well. I want to say thank you to the processors who have enabled us to go on site, take images, because obviously when we're doing quite a visual form of training, we need to take lots of photos, scan, meet, and so on. So each of these organisations were very generous with access and time, and we really appreciate it, and have also given us user feedback and helped guiding us on the way through. And then finally, I guess a request to you guys, the members, you know, we'd really love it that those modules are ready to test. So we'd really love it if different organisations would put their hands up and play around with them and give us any comments and feedback. We'd be super interested if you're looking or would be interested in developing additional content and modules, because we now have the backbone of the platform, as you've seen, an online and a VR platform. So for us to create content and tailor it to your needs, whether it's just generic industry training that can be shared with everybody or to tailor to your specific organisation, we can certainly do that. Advise if you're interested in a live demonstration of the VR, because it is really powerful training for the right times and the right situations. And we're really keen to collaborate. We're talking to a number of different research organisations. We're talking to livestock producers. We're talking to industry bodies and training organisations who are really interested in what we're seeing. And I think there's a real desire by industry to maybe bring some of this together so that we produce richer content that's usable across multiple scenarios, but it's more efficient and effective and powerful. And that's me. Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you, Sean. And while I'm at it, thank you to everyone who's presented, Jonathan, Lance, Roger, and Sean. We'll open up to questions in a minute. I'm not too sure if there are, but probably a couple of things I'd like to say about everything that we looked at today. As I certainly see it, and I hope everyone did see that there was a real diversity in the approach that the companies that were involved today took to the challenge that we put out there for describing. So in other words, there was 4 different approaches, and in my mind there's 4 different outcomes and multiple uses from those outcomes. Again, going back to whether that's training or whether that's automation or somewhere in between, onboarding, etc. that Sean was mentioning. I think it's important to mention that, in case you missed it at the beginning, that when we set out this, we were using Describing as a test case or a use case for this. AMPC ourselves, we supplied each of the 4 providers with a specification to work. So even Describing, as an example, has a different cut specification depending on which plant or which what type of production you're actually running. But we basically had everyone working off the same cut specification, so that we understand that there's many variations of that. And I just want to emphasize that all of these solutions could be varied to meet individual plant needs, if you like. And then you take that even further away from the Describing itself. It's not just Describing that we're talking about, and I think Sean showed a bit of that at the end there with the primal packaging or the primal picking for carton placement. That's another example of where this has led to. So we started off with gamification, looked at Describing, we're now looking at all the different use cases, and that's really where I want to get to today, is get feedback on what we've done today. And also to get to drive, I guess, the further ideas. What else can we do? What other use cases do you want us to come on site? Do you want an individual provider or all the providers to come on site, talk about particular use cases or where it can and can't be used? So they're all things that I want to try and get out of today. And just again to re-emphasize that this is only stage 1. If you remember that one of those slides I put up at the beginning, there was an R&D path with about 5 or 6 different stages in there. This is stage 1. We're now starting to look at stage 2 for some applications, but we want to be able to, or we certainly believe that very soon we'll start seeing gamification being used in the different environments that we're talking about, and actually being used to drive and increase your efficiencies on plant. So really look forward to hearing any feedback, in particular driving any tasks. So Amanda, is there any questions at the moment?
There's been no questions come through, Stuart. So I think all the presenters obviously did a fantastic job in their presentations and describing gamification.
Well, that's good. Everyone might get an early mark then, yeah. Fantastic. Well, in case if other questions come up, that's great. But meanwhile, Amanda, I want to thank you for putting on the webinar. You're the main person around driving and organising, making sure we're all doing the right thing to make these webinars happen. This and many others. So thank you for that. I want to thank the AMPC team surrounding gamification. So everyone on the team is taking part in this gamification exercise. Whether it's putting input, helping their providers guide what we're doing, or indeed the other component of that is being on site and driving use cases, if you like, with our processors, which is the other big thank you there's any processor that's been involved to this to date, which there have been a lot, you know, allowing us time, providers on time to take photographs, to ask questions and so forth. So we really appreciate that. Projects like this can't happen without that involvement. And other than that, yeah, thanking again the 4 providers that were at the table today, Jonathan, Lance, Georgia, and Sean. Really appreciate your time and everyone else's time here today. So thanks for listening, and thanks to those who listen to it on YouTube as a recording later on. But if there's not any other questions, we'll leave it there.
Fantastic. Thank you, Stuart, for pulling it all together. And I agree, the AMPC team, it's been a huge effort across the team. And it's really good to start to see it's almost Industry 4.0 moving into Industry 5.0 as well, in terms of how everything works with machinery and automation. So I think it's a really exciting time for the industry moving forward. And, you know, hopefully will help some of those labour shortages and being able to open up our labour markets and to a wider workforce into the future as well.
Absolutely. Excellent.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy your early mark.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Thanks.